So the Peers program, as I said, we're an Israel-based NGO, not-for-profit. And what we do is that we connect the Israeli tech ecosystem with needs in emerging markets. So as you all know, I don't know if you all know, but we like to call ourselves the startup nation. There are so many technological advancements being grown out of Israel. It's quite a hub and a bubbling hub. But unfortunately, most of these technologies are not being directed to where they could actually make the most impact, which, around areas in the world like West Africa or Ghana, developing countries. And it's a real shame. We think that it's a missed opportunity, both business-wise and impact-wise. So that's what we're trying to do as an organization. And we do that through multiple programs that we run. And I'm going to touch on one of them shortly. But we are here together with Mashav. I don't know where Gloria is, but I want to thank her for hosting us here. Mashav is the aid cooperation organization from Israel, based outside of the embassy, the Israeli embassy. Most Ghanaians know Israel because of our in agri-tech and agricultural solutions. And there's quite a lot of activity of Israeli companies in Ghana actually offering agricultural solutions. But I'd like to run to provide a little bit on what made Israel such an empire in agriculture tech development, because it's actually quite impressive what we've managed to do in such a short amount of time. So this is the map of Israel, and as you can see, pretty much half of the country, or 2/3 of it, is really dry. So half of the country has less than 100 millimeters of rain a year. It's desert, basically, or arid or semi-arid conditions, which basically means that our biggest problem is how can we grow food in an environment that is not favorable with water, external conditions. And I think we can make a few kind of connections between what Ghana is actually going through, especially with climate change and what's happening with the rain patterns and having less rainy seasons than we're used to, and basically the kind of difficulties or conditions that Israel has been needing to face, right? So it's a pretty complex geographical environment, as we all know, politically, right? We're quite far from markets that we need to export to. Hi, welcome. You're welcome to join us. And we're a very small country. And yeah, as I said, our major issue is water and land that is arable, that we can actually grow on. But somehow, through these challenges, and I always say that challenges are the best opportunities, even right now with the world crisis, with everything that's been going on, with inputs, there's a lot of opportunity in store. Can we move to the next slide? Great. So despite all these challenges, Israel became the startup nation, especially in agri-tech. And because we're here as part of the Ghana Digital Innovation Week, I would like to focus more on the digital solutions coming out of Israel and less on, hardware solutions. We're kind of all familiar with greenhouses and drip irrigation and so on, so I'm going to put that aside, and I'm going to focus on some of the digital technologies that are being formed in Israel. So I would like to show you a quick YouTube video. Can we go on the next slide? Nope, that's the last one. The next one. Yep. So if you can press on this photo. So it's a really quick kind of promotional video on why Israel is the kind of expert in agri-tech. So it's going to give us a bit of a background more than what I've just explained. I hope that we managed to hear it well. If you can just press on that. Yeah, there we go.
Drip irrigation, the most efficient irrigation method on Earth, was developed in Israel. Volcani Center researchers have developed systems which provide climate monitoring and control in greenhouses, namely temperature, humidity, and ventilation control. plant to grow and produce, it needs ideal conditions that aren't necessarily provided by nature or in its growing habitat. Welcome to the future of agriculture. Our advanced systems developed in Israel enable and accurately observe and measure all parameters necessary for an ideal habitat for the plant while maximizing resource utilization. After a fruit or vegetable has been picked, it's the post-harvest period in which fruit quality gradually degrades, in many cases leading to an increasing amount of produce losses, resulting in massive financial losses. Our scientists have developed advanced means and methods to extend the shelf life of fruit without affecting taste or aroma. Research and development in labs across the country, predominantly Volcani Center, led to the development of high-yield varieties more resistant to adverse climate conditions, pests, and diseases. They are more aromatic and contain higher nutritional values. Volcani scientists also developed cooling and ventilation systems for dairy farms that substantially reduce the temperature and increase the welfare of cows, thus enabling intensive and profitable milk production in dairy farms in desert areas. Israeli dairy cows produce 12,000 liters of milk annually, a worldwide production record. Agricultural waste is a great nuisance to the environment and to farmers alike. Several Israeli companies provide advanced solutions to these challenges all around the globe. Their development technologies enable recycling and complete reuse of the waste as animal feed, crop fertilizer, and a renewable energy source. Our world is changing rapidly. World population is increasing along with the standard of living. Our needs grow while climate change impacts our environment and limits our attempts to increase world agricultural production. Today, with the knowledge accumulated over the years, can provide advanced solutions to many of these challenges around the world. Think agriculture. Think Israel.
All right, a little bit of self-promotion can't hurt.
Wait!
Can we just,
Did you?
Yep. Can we go back to the presentation? Thank you. All right, so this was just a bit of an introduction of, what is actually happening in Israel. I can talk about what is going on, but some visuals and images help you grasp what is happening. But as I said, I'm going to focus on our digital innovation rather than our infrastructure, hardware, and those kind of solutions. But what is actually bringing me and my colleague Jonathan to Ghana? So at the Peers Program for Global Innovation, we have a program called the Peers Challenge, which is basically a venture building program. So I mentioned earlier, some of you have missed out that our organization helps to bridge between the Israeli technology ecosystem and needs in developing countries and emerging markets. And a lot of times what we do is we help Israeli startups adapt their products and penetrate these kind of markets and do meaningful business. But what we find is that a lot of these companies don't necessarily have the most relevant technologies to the conditions in this place. So what we decided to do many years ago, and right now we're just finishing our 5th cohort, is to harness the bright minds of the Israeli tech ecosystem and direct their efforts to finding new solutions to actual problems on the ground in places like Ghana, in places like West Africa. So this was the Peers Challenge. It's a 5-month-long program, actually a lot longer if we look at it, where, as I said, Israeli entrepreneurs are exploring new markets, kind of learning about needs and challenges, and come up with new tech solutions that really match those needs, right? And can you go to the next slide, please? And one of the things that we use, hi, welcome. We use design thinking methods in order to do that. So we're basically trying to make sure that the products that we produce with our program really fit the market. And it's really challenging because, people that are based in Israel and have never touched base in places like Ghana and have never been to this part of the world are trying to innovate for this part of the world. It's challenging. And we use all kinds of methodologies. I will offer one of these methodologies here today for you so that you will be able to take that and use that in your own innovation processes. But these methodologies help us develop solutions that actually fit the market that we're exploring, okay? One of these methods, if we can go to the next slide, is called the design criteria tool. So what we're going to do, I'm going to kind of walk you through the tool and how it works. And then we're going to look at or examine each kind of, you're going to group up. It's going to be quite of an interactive session, right? It's a workshop. It's not a presentation. So I'm going to present you with some of the most cutting edge Israeli digital ag tech solutions, and we're going to examine them through the lens of this tool, of the design criteria tool, and basically see how can these solutions, what kind of criteria do they need to take into consideration in order to really fit what is happening in Ghana. But we'll get there. So let me first introduce this tool, if we can go to the next slide. So the first thing that we want to ask ourselves is, what is the actual problem that we're trying to solve, right? When we were working with our entrepreneurs that actually are now finishing 2 weeks of very intense work on the ground of, interacting with farmers, interacting with communities, interacting with local counterparts, at first, we try to open them up to really get a deep understanding of what are the major challenges of the Ghanaian food and agriculture system. What are the current gaps that don't really have any answers yet for, right? So I don't know if any one of you is going or planning to go on an entrepreneurial journey your own, but the first thing that we want to ask is, what is the problem? What really is a major pain point in the sector, right? That doesn't have an answer to, that is not being currently addressed. So when you're gonna look at those Israeli digital ag tech solutions, ask yourself, why do they exist? What kind of problem do they try to solve? And that will help us see whether this problem also exists in Ghana. Maybe it doesn't, right? But how can we then, adapt these technologies to really fit? And then the tool is basically giving us a way to map all kinds of attributes and outputs that an innovation or a solution needs to have or to achieve in order for the solution itself to actually be viable, to actually fit the market. I know that some of you are familiar with these processes, but maybe I'm gonna do a little bit of a, I'm hoping that I'm giving you some new information here. All right, so let me introduce the tool. Can we go to the next slide? Great. So there's basically, usually when we use the tools, there are 4 criteria. Our team has included a 5th criteria that is very, very relevant for our time. But we usually start with the user, right? The way we do our work in design thinking, as I mentioned, is very user-centric. So if we try to look at the problem, we're trying to see who does this problem affect, who really deals with it on a day-to-day basis, and what kind of aspects about the user we have to take into account when we're designing a solution for that user, right? So for example, if we're developing a solution for rural farmers that have 1 acre or 2 acres of land in the north of Ghana, we might want to think about their rate of literacy, right? Maybe their digital literacy is not super, super advanced, and our solution needs to fit that, right? Maybe our solution needs to be communicated not through text, but maybe through voice or emojis, right? Or something that is understood in other channels. So this is where we look at our user and we see what kind of characteristics or criteria our solution should have in order for it to actually be relevant for that user. Does that make sense to everyone in the room? Okay, I hope it does, but it's going to be a bit clearer, hopefully. The next criteria that we're looking at is the value enhancing criteria, which basically looks at the problem and the value that the solution is providing for the problem, right? So what is the user actually gaining out of it? What is the criteria of the optimal outcome of our innovation? So for example, if we're bringing an innovation that is, helping farmers increase their yield. It could be a new type of fertilizer. It could be a new type of app that helps manage the farm, right? Eventually, we want this solution to be able to show an increase in production. So that's the value-enhancing criteria, all right? There can be other criteria. It all relates to the problem that we're initially looking at. But what is the actual value or outputs that the user is looking for from our innovation, from our solution? Number 3, context-related criteria. And this is very, very important, because when we work with Israeli entrepreneurs, a lot of the times their biggest barrier is really understanding the context. They're based so far away. But I'm talking to Ghanaians here, so what I'm asking you to do is think, what are the criteria that are related or rooted in the Ghanaian context that needs to take into consideration in order for solutions to be applicable or viable? So for example, let's say if I'm introducing a new type of seed, right, that is advanced or was tested in other parts of the world and was proven successful, can it work in the contextual conditions of Ghana? For example, the levels of humidity, right? So that's more of the contextual criteria or characteristics that we have to take into consideration. The fourth one is about the technicalities. So what is the technical criteria that the solution must take into account, right? So for example, if we have a digital solution, we want to think about maybe having it operate on a USSD system and not necessarily through WhatsApp or, data-heavy kind of platforms or app platforms. Or we want it to be able to operate offline as well as online, right? So this is more around the tech elements that our solution needs to harness in order for it to be applicable. And the last one that we've added, and we think it's super, super, super important when we're thinking of innovation these days, is environmental and social impact criteria, right? So if we're looking at agriculture, we want to make sure that the new innovations that we promote are innovations that promote sustainable land use and sustainable practices of agriculture. So for example, all of the solutions that were formed or built through our program are supporting organic, chemical-free processes, right? Are supporting regenerative practices rather than practices that exploit and really degrade our soil. So this is something that we need to think about. If it's a hardware solutions, we might want to think about, are those components of the hardware solution recyclable? What happens when they wear out? Do we just discard them, or are we able to bring them into the system back in a circular way? Same with social impact criteria. Who are we targeting? What about women's rights, right? Some of our best farmers are women. Do our technologies fit women and their ways of farming? As you all know, a lot of the tech solutions that are being formed are being innovated by men, So these are a few blind spots that we do need to take into consideration. Can we just go back so that I can do a quick review? And you're all going to get a little worksheet that you can take with you, and it can support you in your innovation processes later on. I hope that it's clear enough, but I'm just going to quickly go through the different criteria. So as we said, user. The user is the most important thing, and that's what we're going to start with. So what attributes of the user do we need to account for? Value-enhancing criteria. What are the optimal outcomes that our solution should create? Context-related criteria. Contextual factors, or it could be environmental factors or even social factors that we have to make sure are being taken into account. Technical criteria, and then environmental and social impact criteria. All right. So I really want us to get our minds and hands dirty and start working. So you all are in around tables, and all of you should have those iPads on your tables. These iPads have information on one of those Israeli companies. And I'm going to go really, really quickly through them. So MyCrops is an Israeli platform that is basically trying to promote sustainable farming through identifying pests and allowing to really pinpoint the pest control practices, right? It uses AI and basically imagery sensing in order to be very, very precise. It's basically a precision kind of agriculture online platform that uses a lot of data to be able to identify those pests and treat them pinpoint. C-Tree is an Israeli company that is mostly looking at tree health and how we can promote better or healthier fruit from our agroforestry projects or orchards. And it uses all kinds of digital inputs from drones and from certain robots that they have in order to promote better farming practices or more efficient farming practices and basically create better fruit. PCAP is an app that it's basically a farm management app, but it's looking at the person power, basically, and how can we make our workers within the farm more effective and create this traceability along the value chain to really allow farms to be as productive and as effective and as prosperous as they can be. And BeeWise is looking at the issue of bees and biodiversity loss, and they're basically creating these autonomous beehives that are really, really interesting. They're solar powered. They can be situated basically anywhere, and they're basically promoting these bee colonies. And the problem they're tackling is the decline of bee population in the world and lack of pollination. So each one of those little groups, you will have an iPad and you can get more information. There are YouTube videos and the website of the company. And basically what I'm going to ask you to do, if we can move to the next slide, is ask which criteria that these solutions must take into account in order for them to fit the Ghanaian market. So you're all Ghanaian, you're all very familiar with the market, which is what Israelis are not, okay? And what we're trying to do here is familiarize you with the latest tech advancements that are being grown out of Israel and trying to see whether there is a product market fit. Now, maybe your answer eventually will be, there is none. These solutions just don't fit, okay? But this is just the beginning of some sort of an inspiration process that could lead you to think, okay, maybe I can develop something that really does fit, but it is also tech-based, okay? Are we happy with that? Does that make sense? So my colleague Jonathan and I are gonna give you these worksheets that have the criteria in them, and we're gonna give you Post-its, and basically we're asking you to work in small groups and to have a little discussion of, you know, you have the technologies in your iPads. Again, what kind of criteria do these technologies must take into consideration for them to really be applicable in Ghana or in West Africa? And if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to come to us. Can we go to the next slide? Yeah. Yeah, I think I mentioned that in your iPads, you have both a YouTube video and the website of the company. You can do a little research to understand what is the company all about. And we're going to walk around and help you with that. And these are the criteria, and make sure that you just put the Post-its where they should be. I hope that this is a useful tool. This is a tool that we work very closely with in our own innovation processes, and it's a tool that basically helps us make sure that there is product market fit at the end of the day. All right, so let's get started. will ask one of the groups to actually come and share with us some of the findings that you've had or some of the insights that you came up with, okay? We are urged to wrap up. It looks like you are already engaged in some fruitful conversation, which makes me happy. But I think we, in the process of concluding the session, can we close this? Perfect. Okay. Is any of the groups wants to come and share their findings with us? Maybe you can come and say which startup you looked at, which technology, and maybe one or two criteria that you came up with. Anyone? Yep, there we go. Okay.
Thank you.
So maybe you can share your name and...
Yes, my name is Amisha Diafori. I'm with a company called Innovation Spark.
I'm Mauli with Grow For Me.
All right, and we got the opportunity to talk about BeeWise. And BeeWise is an AI-enabled beehive. Okay, so the idea is the typical beehive that you know, the box is about 150 years old. Why haven't we thought about innovating it? And we went ahead to look at different criteria of how we can sell this AI automated platform beehive to a typical bee farmer. We took a bee farmer ideally in the north, because in the north there are farmers who grow cashew who also simultaneously set up beehives to help pollinate their cashew, so they get honey at the same time helping increase yield. So we just go through the different criteria. I'll take the first two and then I'll allow Mauli to take the rest. So we wanted to see what's the user-related criteria. And by this we mean, what are the key aspects about it for the user? It must be understandable for someone with limited literacy rate. So yes, we are imagining that the typical beehive farmer has limited literacy. But what we realize is that the best way to go about this is to have a third party sell it to the farmer. So in typical technology, like IBM, for example, if they come to sell their AI platform, they'll come to me as a reseller and say, hey, I'm selling it to you, go and sell it to others. So this is a perfect way also, our group members hinted, of hiring the youth in the locality. We'll train them to be able to understand the technology. They go and sell it to the farmers and say, hey, listen, we are going to do a bargain with you. We have a new technology, we'll install it, and when we get an increased yield, we'll split the profit. So we are not even letting you pay for the technology, right? We have paid for it, let's just split profit. Which segues beautifully into the second one, what is the value enhancing criteria? And we found it interesting. BeeWise is thinking 20% increase. We are thinking it might even be higher here in Ghana, because there's definitely like losses from their current approach of getting the honey. So we are thinking we might even be able to double it, right? And this will be profit for both the reseller and now the farmer, which would be like a great way to sell it. So Mauli, take it.
All right, next we moved on to the context-related criteria. We are aware that bees in Israel will not definitely be the same as bees in Ghana. You know, machine learning uses already acquired data to train your model to be able to make decisions. So taking the context into consideration, we need to find out what kind of bees we have in Tamale in the north, and then look at the data that's already existing and see how best we can fit that to the kind of bees we have here in Ghana. For the technical criteria, so we are looking at how easy is it going to be to operate these hives. What kind of knowledge will be needed by the farmers or by the operators to operate the hives, and what kind of training will be given to them. Looking at the kind of education, the average education level that everybody has in the northern region, and how best to approach it. Also, for the environmental and social impact criteria, we found out that the most important criteria, as he mentioned earlier, will be the provision of jobs for the people in the north, where we're able to train senior high school leavers and people interested in agriculture or in bee farming to be able to take up this opportunity. So that's Beehive.
Thank you, Mauli. So one more thing about technical. We know in Ghana, internet is not always stable, right? So we said that it should be semi-offline. By that, we can allow it throughout the day to take the data using sensory devices, but once a day or maybe twice a day, it can go online to upload the data, and that will also help to curb that part of it. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Round of applause. I think you guys used the tool really brilliantly. You actually touched some of the major blind spots of Israeli tech entrepreneurs when they try to innovate for places like Ghana, for places like Africa. They don't take into account that there are mediators that are more tech savvy and they can translate the technology to the end user, right? This was a brilliant presentation. Thank you so much. Before we wrap up, is there one final group that wants to present? No? I think you intimidated some of them. All right. Essentially, the output that you guys need to take out of this workshop, as far as I'm concerned, is that the best innovators for the challenges that West Africa and Ghana is facing is people like you. People from this place, this context, that are familiar with the user, are familiar with the context, are familiar with the technicalities and the barriers, are familiar with the social and environmental aspects of what is actually happening here. You are the innovators of the next age of technologies that really are going to address the major challenges of the food and agriculture sector in this part of the world. And I hope that this tool that we've presented is going to be a useful tool in your innovation processes. Before you leave, you will see on that table over there a similar worksheet, so you can take it with you and use it at home. I can see that people are still discussing and, and conversing. One thing I want to say, if you are a company that is looking to innovate, if you're thinking of including Israeli technologies in your operations, feel free to reach out to us. That's what we do. We're here to bridge. My business card is over there, so I'm more than happy to share it, and I'm more than happy to continue the conversation beyond this session today. And I also would love to thank the organizers of the Ghana Digital Innovation Week, the Embassy of Israel in Ghana, and Mashav. Thank you, Gloria. I hope that this was a fruitful session for you guys. And yeah, we look forward to keep the innovation going. Thank you guys so much.